They sent 9,700 ships to assault Earth. Only 17 survived. Part 5, 17. The silence came slowly. For hours, the space around Earth had been filled with fire, noise, and death. Plasma blasts, explosions, the crack of railgun slugs tearing through metal, the roar of engines, the desperate cries of dying crews on open channels. And then, piece by piece, it stopped. The last Veshari warship to fire its weapons was a small destroyer on the edge of the battlefield. It launched 2 plasma shots at a group of Jiyun's fighters before a beam from the Iron Veil cut it in half. The 2 halves drifted apart in opposite directions, trailing sparks and frozen atmosphere. After that, there was nothing. Yuna stared at her screen in the command bunker. Her eyes burned from exhaustion. She had not left her console in over 14 hours. Her hands hovered over the controls, still ready, still waiting for the next wave. There was nothing left. She ran the scan 3 times to be sure. Then she spoke. "General, all hostile fire has ceased. I am reading 17 Veshari ships still intact. All are severely damaged. No shields, no weapons online. Minimal engine power. They are drifting. 17 out of 9,700. 17. The command bunker was completely silent. Every officer, every technician, every analyst sat motionless, staring at their screens. The number hung in the air like something too large to hold. Taeho stood at the center of it all. His face showed nothing. He had trained himself years ago to keep his emotions locked away during combat. But his hands, hidden behind his back, were trembling. He pressed them together tightly and took a long, slow breath. "Ceasefire," he said. "All units ceasefire. Do not fire on those 17 ships." The order went out across every channel. Suho powered down the Iron Veil. The railguns went to standby mode. Jian recalled her fighters. Hana's destroyers held position but lowered their weapons. Jian was the last to comply. She sat in the cockpit of her fighter, surrounded by the wreckage of a fleet that had come to enslave her world. Pieces of Veshari ships floated past her canopy, twisted metal, frozen bodies, broken weapons. She had destroyed more enemy ships in the last few hours than she could count. Her ammunition was nearly gone. Her fuel was low. Her muscles ached from the constant high-speed turns and maneuvers. She wanted to keep going. Every instinct she had told her to finish the job. 17 ships was still 17 ships. But Taeho had given the order, and she understood why. She turned her fighter around and headed back to Earth. On the ruined bridge of his flagship, Fleet Commander Dolgan was alive. Barely. The ship had taken 4 direct hits and was venting atmosphere on multiple decks. Half his crew was dead. The other half was trying to keep the ship from falling apart. Dolgan sat in his command chair. The chair was cracked, and one of its supports had broken, making it lean to the side. He did not bother to fix it. His uniform was torn. His gray skin was covered in dust and dried blood from a wound on his head. 3 of his 4 arms hung limp at his sides. Only his right hand still moved, resting on the armrest. He stared at the viewport. Through the cracks in the glass, he could see Earth. The planet was still there, still blue, still turning slowly beneath its layer of white clouds, untouched. After everything he had thrown at it, not a single weapon had reached the surface. Around his flagship, 16 other Veshari ships drifted in the debris field. Some were barely holding together. Others had lost entire sections of their hull. None of them had working weapons. None of them could fight. A light blinked on the communications panel. Dolgan reached over with his one working hand and opened the channel. General Taeho's voice filled the bridge. It was the same voice from the warning message, calm and controlled. But now it carried something else, a weight that had not been there before. The weight of a man who had just fought the hardest battle of his life, and won. Fleet Commander, this is General Tejo. Your fleet is destroyed. Your weapons are offline. You are in no position to fight. I have ordered my forces to hold fire. Dolgan listened. He did not respond. Tejo continued. I am going to let your 17 ships leave. We will not fire on you. We will not pursue you. You will be given enough time to repair your engines and leave this system. On the bridge, Bregan looked at Dolgan with wide eyes. They are letting us go? Dolgan still said nothing. His orange eyes were fixed on the blue planet outside the viewport. I am doing this for one reason, Commander. I want you to go home. I want you to go back to your High Council, to your Empire, to every species that has ever heard of the Vishari, and I want you to tell them what happened here. A pause. Earth is not a target. Earth is not a conquest. Earth is a warning, and if anyone else comes here looking for a fight, they will find the same thing you found, except next time, we will not let anyone leave. The channel closed. Dolgan sat in silence for a very long time. Then, slowly, he gave the order. All ships, set course for home, best possible speed. It took the 17 surviving ships nearly a full day to get their engines working well enough to move. During that time, not a single human weapon fired. Not a single fighter approached them. The humans simply watched and waited. When the last Vishari ship finally limped out of the solar system and entered faster-than-light travel, a quiet breath of relief passed through the command bunker. Yuna leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. For the first time in months, the deep space sensors showed nothing. Empty space, quiet stars, no incoming threats. She opened her eyes and looked at Tejo. He was still standing in the center of the room. He had not sat down once during the entire battle. It is over, sir, she said softly. Tejo nodded slowly. For now. Over the following hours, the defense forces stood down one system at a time. Suho ran a full diagnostic on the Iron Veil. 34 satellites had been destroyed during the battle. He began planning replacements before the diagnostic was even finished. The railguns needed recharging and minor repairs, but were otherwise intact. Admiral Hana brought the lunar fleet back to the moon. Her ships had taken damage. 12 destroyers needed significant repairs, and 2 were beyond saving. But the fleet was still strong. As the destroyers descended back into their craters, Hana allowed herself a small moment of pride. Her fleet had performed exactly as she had trained it to. Then she put that feeling away and started writing her after-action report. Captain Ji-yoon landed her fighter at the underground hangar in central Korea. She climbed out of the cockpit on legs that felt like they were made of water. Her ground crew was waiting. Some of them were crying. She had lost 23 pilots, 23 empty chairs in the briefing room. She would write letters to each of their families. She would not let anyone else do it. In the command bunker, the War Council met one final time. Tejo, Yuna, Suho, Ji-yoon, and Hana sat around the same table where they had planned the defense months ago. They were exhausted. They were bruised. But they were alive, and so was their planet. The Vishari will talk, Tejo said. They will tell everyone what happened here. Word will spread across the galaxy. Good, Hana said. Let it spread. Other species will come eventually, Suho said quietly. Not to attack, to talk, to trade, to understand. And some will come to test us, Ji-yoon added. Tejo nodded. Then we will be ready for that too. He looked at each of them, his team, his officers, the people who had stood between humanity and annihilation and had not broken. We go back to work, he said. And they did. The news reached the public eventually. It had to. The wreckage field in orbit was too large to hide forever. When the world learned what had happened, that an alien fleet had come to conquer them and had been destroyed by a defense force they never knew existed, The reaction was not panic. It was not anger. It was something quieter and deeper. It was the realization that they were not alone in the universe, but that they could stand on their own. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth spread like fire. The Vishari Empire, humiliated and weakened, never sent another fleet. Other species listened to the tale with a mixture of awe and unease. A primitive species, a single planet, no interstellar travel, and they had annihilated an armada of nearly 10,000 ships. Every species that heard the story asked the same question, a question that kept admirals awake at night and made emperors look over their shoulders. What else are the humans hiding? Nobody ever got an answer, and that was exactly the point. They sent 9,700 ships to assault Earth. Only 17 survived. Part 4. The Collapse. Fleet Commander Dolgan had never known fear. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions. He had stood on the bridges of dying ships and given orders while fire burned around him. Fear was something weaker species felt. It was something prey felt. But standing on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the display that showed the wreckage of 5,500 of his ships, Dolgan felt something cold crawl up his spine. He did not call it fear. He called it anger. But his hands were shaking, and he could not stop them. "This is not possible," he said for the third time. His voice was lower now, rougher. The confidence that had carried him across 11 star systems was cracking. "They are primitives. They do not even have faster-than-light travel. How are they doing this?" No one on the bridge answered him. His officers stood at their stations, silent, pale under their gray skin. The mood had shifted from confusion to something closer to horror. They had watched 2 waves disappear in less than an hour. Ships that had survived dozens of campaigns were now floating debris around a planet that was supposed to be defenseless. Dolgan gripped the railing in front of his command chair with all 4 hands. He stared at the blue planet on the display. It sat there, calm and beautiful, completely untouched. It almost looked peaceful. That made it worse. His second-in-command, a tall officer named Bregan, stepped forward carefully. "Commander, perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We can regroup, call for reinforcements from the home system, and return with—" "No." Dolgan's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "We are not retreating from a species that still uses chemical rockets. I will not return to the High Council and tell them that a single planet defeated the greatest fleet in our history. I would rather die." He turned to face his officers. His orange eyes burned. "All ships, every single one, full assault, no waves, no formations. We go in together, all at once, from every direction. Overwhelm their defenses with sheer numbers. They cannot shoot all of us." Bregan opened his mouth to object, then closed it. He knew that look in Dolgan's eyes. There would be no more discussion. The order went out to the remaining 4,200 ships. Every captain received the same command: advance at maximum speed, fire everything, stop for nothing. It was not a strategy. It was desperation wrapped in rage. But 4,200 warships was still an enormous force, and Dolgan was betting that no defense system could handle that many targets at once. In the command bunker, Yuna's screen lit up with movement. Every remaining red dot was accelerating. All of them, at the same time. "General," she said, and for the first time there was a slight edge in her voice. "They are sending everything. All remaining ships, full speed, no formation. They are coming in from multiple angles." Tejo studied the display. The red dots were spreading out, approaching Earth from all sides like a closing fist. It was a brute force attack, crude, but dangerous. The Iron Veil could only track so many targets at once. The railguns needed time to recharge between shots, and Jiyun's fighters, as skilled as they were, could only be in so many places at once. For a moment, The room was very quiet. Everyone was doing the same math in their heads. 4,200 ships against a defense network that had already been working at full capacity. Could they hold? Tejo made his decision in 3 seconds. "Admiral Hana," he said into the command channel. "It is time." On the far side of the moon, Admiral Hana received the message. She had been waiting for it. She had been waiting for 8 years. She stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked at her crew. They were ready. They had always been ready. "All ships," Hana said, her voice filling every bridge in the lunar fleet. "Power up main engines. Weapons hot. We are going around the moon and into the fight. Formation Delta. Stay tight until we clear the lunar horizon, then spread wide. Target their largest ships first. We end this today." 300 heavy destroyers ignited their engines in unison. The vibration ran through the moon's surface like a quiet earthquake. The fleet rose from the craters and caverns where they had been hiding and moved as one body around the curve of the moon. When they cleared the lunar horizon and came into view of the Veshari fleet, the effect was immediate. The Veshari had not known about the lunar fleet. Their sensors had never detected it. Their intelligence had never even suggested it was possible. And now, 300 warships, each one nearly as large as a Veshari cruiser, appeared out of nowhere, right behind them. Panic. Real, uncontrollable panic. It swept through the Veshari fleet like a disease. Ships that had been charging toward Earth suddenly tried to turn. Formations that were already loose fell apart completely. Captains screamed conflicting orders at each other. Some ships collided in the chaos. And then, Hana's fleet opened fire. Plasma batteries and missile arrays unleashed a storm of destruction into the rear of the Veshari formation. Hana's destroyers had been designed to fight capital ships, and they did it well. Each volley tore through Veshari armor. Each missile found its mark. The Veshari rear guard, which had been the safest position in the fleet moments ago, became a killing field. At the same time, Suho fired the railguns again. The 6 platforms had recharged during the brief pause between waves, and now they sent their heavy slugs into the center of the Veshari formation. Each impact erased a ship from existence. Jian led her fighters into the gaps. She had pulled her wings back to rearm during the pause, and now they returned fresh and loaded. They dove into the scattered Veshari fleet, targeting engines, weapon systems, and command bridges. Jian herself destroyed 4 ships in the first 10 minutes of the assault. The Veshari were trapped. Hana's fleet behind them, the Iron Veil above them, Jian's fighters among them, Suho's railguns striking from orbit. There was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to hide. Dolgan watched his fleet die. Ship after ship blinked out on his display. The numbers fell so fast he could not keep track. 4,000, 3,000, 2,000. The command channel was filled with screams, distress calls, and the sound of explosions. Captains begged for orders. Dolgan had no orders to give. His flagship shuddered as a railgun slug passed close enough to tear off the outer hull plating on the port side. The ship groaned. Alarms screamed. Officers fell to the floor as the bridge tilted. "Shields failing," Bregan reported, blood running from a cut above his eye. "Hull damage on decks 7 through 12. We have lost the port engine." Dolgan said nothing. He stood at the railing, gripping it so hard his knuckles had turned white. His orange eyes reflected the light of his burning fleet. Another impact. This one was direct. A plasma blast from one of Hana's destroyers hit the flagship's midsection. The entire ship buckled. Power went out on half the decks. The main display flickered and went dark. Dolgan was thrown to the floor. He lay there for a moment, in the darkness, listening to the groaning metal of his dying ship. Around him, officers cried out. Sparks fell from the ceiling. He pulled himself up slowly. Emergency lighting cast the bridge in a dim red glow. Through the cracked viewport, he could see the battle outside. It was not a battle anymore. It was a massacre. Veshari ships burned in every direction. Debris tumbled through space in thick clouds. Human fighters darted through the wreckage, like predators cleaning a battlefield. Dolgan had led 9,700 ships to this planet. He had promised the High Council an easy victory. He had promised his officers glory. Now he watched as everything he had built, everything he had believed, turned to fire and silence. He did not speak. He did not give any more orders. There was nothing left to say. They sent 9,700 ships to assault Earth. Only 17 survived. Part 3. First Contact, Last Warning. The Veshari fleet crossed the orbit of Mars on a cold Tuesday morning, Earth time. 9,700 ships moved in a formation so wide it could be seen on civilian telescopes. Astronomers around the world began calling their colleagues. Social media lit up with blurry photographs of strange lights moving across the sky. Governments released carefully prepared statements about unusual astronomical activity. The panic had not started yet, but it was close. In the command bunker beneath the Pacific, General Tejo watched the red dots on his display creep closer. The fleet was now less than 80 million kilometers away. At their current speed, they would reach Earth orbit in less than 2 days. It was time. Tejo turned to Yuna, who had been transferred to the command bunker 3 weeks earlier. She sat at the main communications console, her fingers resting on the controls. She had barely slept in days, but her eyes were sharp. "Open a channel," Tejo said. "All frequencies. Every language we have decoded from their transmissions." Yuna nodded and activated the system. A green light appeared on her screen. The channel was open. Tejo stood straight and spoke clearly. His voice was calm, steady, and carried no emotion. It was not a plea. It was not a negotiation. It was a statement. "Attention approaching fleet. This is General Tejo of the planet Earth. You are entering defended space. Your intentions are hostile. We know this. We have watched you coming for months. I am giving you one chance, and one chance only. Turn your ships around and leave this system. If you do not, we will destroy you. This is your only warning." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. It reached the Veshari fleet in minutes. On the bridge of his massive flagship, Fleet Commander Dolgan listened to the translation. His officers looked at each other with confusion. Some of them smiled. One of them laughed out loud. Dolgan raised one of his 4 hands for silence. He leaned forward in his command chair and looked at the blue dot on his own display. Earth. A tiny, fragile world making threats. "They are bold," he said. "I will give them that." "Should we respond, Commander?" his communications officer asked. Dolgan thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, responding would give them dignity they have not earned. Launch the first wave. 2,000 ships, standard assault formation. Burn through whatever primitive defenses they have, and secure orbit." The order went out. 2,000 Veshari warships broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward Earth. Their engines glowed bright blue against the black of space. Each ship powered up its plasma cannons and raised its energy shields. They expected resistance. They expected to brush it aside. In the command bunker, Yuna tracked them coming. First wave incoming. 2,000 ships. They will reach engagement range in approximately 90 minutes. Tejo looked at Suho. "Iron Veil?" "Ready," Suho said. He sat at his own console, calm and focused. 12,000 satellites waited for his command. "I recommend we let them get close, inside 200,000 kilometers. The directed energy weapons are most effective at that range. Maximum damage, minimum waste." Tejo agreed. "Hold fire until they cross the line." The next 90 minutes were the longest of Yuna's life. She watched the red dots move closer and closer on her screen. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Around her, the bunker was quiet. Everyone was waiting. The first wave crossed the 200,000-kilometer mark at exactly 11:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. "They are in range," Yuna said. Taeho looked at Suho. "Light them up." Suho pressed a single key on his console. 12,000 satellites activated at the same moment. Beams of focused energy, invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to anything they touched, lanced out across space. They hit the Vashari ships at the speed of light. There was no time to dodge. There was no time to react. The Vashari shields flickered and failed almost instantly. The directed energy beams had been designed to target the specific frequency patterns of Vashari's shield technology, a frequency Suho had spent years analyzing from intercepted Vashari communications. He had built the Iron Veil to kill these exact ships. The first 100 Vashari warships exploded within 30 seconds. The next 200 died in the following minute. The formation broke apart as captains tried to scatter, tried to find cover in the emptiness of space. There was no cover. The Iron Veil tracked each ship individually, adjusting fire in real time. At the 7-minute mark, Jian launched her fighters. Thousands of small, fast ships burst out of the atmosphere from hangars across the globe. They rose through the sky like a swarm of silver arrows, breaking through the upper atmosphere and spreading out in attack formations. Jian led them from the cockpit of her own fighter, the first one out of the hangar and the first one into the fight. The fighters targeted the Vashari supply carriers and troop transports, the soft targets hiding behind the warships. Without those ships, the Vashari could not sustain an occupation. Jian knew this. She had planned for exactly this. Her pilots were fast and precise. They darted between the burning wreckage of Vashari cruisers, firing short bursts that ripped through unshielded transport hulls. The Vashari gunners tried to track them, but the human fighters were too small and too quick. They had been designed to be nearly invisible to the kind of targeting systems the Vashari used. By the 11-minute mark, the first wave was broken. Ships drifted in pieces. Explosions bloomed and faded in the silence of space. Escape pods launched in every direction. The few surviving warships turned and ran back toward the main fleet, trailing smoke and fire. On his flagship, Dolgan stood frozen. His display was a mess of red warning lights and loss reports. 2,000 ships, gone in 11 minutes. He had not even had time to finish his drink. "Impossible," he whispered. But the evidence was right in front of him. The wreckage of his first wave was spreading across 100,000 kilometers of space, and the blue planet below was untouched. Not a single shot had reached its surface. His officers were shouting. Some wanted to retreat. Some wanted to send everything at once. Dolgan silenced them with a roar that shook the bridge. "They got lucky," he snarled. "They caught us off guard with hidden weapons. It will not happen again. Send the second wave. 3,500 ships, full combat spread. I want overlapping shield formations. I want every gun firing the moment they are in range." The second wave launched. It was larger, more aggressive, and better organized. The ships flew in tight clusters, their shields overlapping to create layers of protection. Dolgan was adapting. But so was Taeho. "Suho," Taeho said calmly, "railguns." Suho smiled for the first time in months. He activated the 6 orbital railgun platforms. Each one hummed with stored energy, as electromagnetic coils charged to full power. Then they fired. 6 300-kilogram metal slugs launched from orbit at a fraction of the speed of light. They crossed the distance to the second wave in moments. There was no flash, no sound, no warning. The first slug hit a Vashari heavy cruiser dead center. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy passed through it and continued into the ship behind it, destroying that one too. A single shot killed 2 capital ships. The other 5 slugs hit with equal devastation. Overlapping shields meant nothing against solid projectiles moving at those speeds. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They had no answer for a piece of metal moving faster than anything the Vishari had ever imagined. Suho fired again, and again. Each volley tore holes in the Vishari formation. Ji-Yoon's fighters swept in behind each volley, picking off the damaged and disoriented ships. Yuna coordinated everything from her console. She fed targeting data to Suho, flight paths to Ji-Yoon, and status updates to Taeho. Her voice never shook. Her hands never trembled. She was the nerve center of the entire defense, and she held it together with a precision that amazed everyone around her. The second wave lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, 3,500 more Vishari ships were gone. The wreckage field around Earth was growing thick enough to be dangerous. In the command bunker, Taeho allowed himself a single deep breath. They had destroyed over half the enemy fleet. But 5,000 ships still remained, and Dalgan was not the kind of commander who gave up easily. They sent 9,700 ships to assault Earth. Only 17 survived. Part 2. The Awakening. The months passed quickly, too quickly. General Taeho slept no more than 4 hours a night. Most nights it was less. He spent every waking moment in the command bunker beneath the Pacific, reviewing battle plans, checking weapons systems, and running simulations. Every simulation told him the same thing. If the enemy was as strong as the sensor data suggested, this fight would be close, very close. But Taeho had never lost a battle by being unprepared, and he was not going to start now. The first thing he did was give Dr. Suho full authority over the Iron Veil network. The Iron Veil was Earth's first line of defense, 12,000 autonomous satellites spread across low and high orbit. From the outside, they looked like ordinary communications or weather satellites. Some of them had been up there for over a decade, hiding in plain sight. But inside each one was a directed energy weapon capable of cutting through starship armor at a distance of several hundred kilometers. Suho had designed them himself. He had personally overseen the construction of every single one. He knew their strengths and their limits. He spent the weeks before the invasion running diagnostics, adjusting targeting software, and linking every satellite into a single coordinated network. When he was done, the Iron Veil could track and engage over 1,000 targets at the same time. They will not expect weapons from orbit, Suho told Taeho during one of their briefings. Every civilization the Vishari have conquered was either too primitive to have orbital capability or too disorganized to use it properly. We are neither. Taeho nodded. What about the railguns? Suho brought up a display showing 6 massive platforms hidden among the satellites. These were the orbital railguns, weapons that fired solid metal slugs at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Each slug weighed 300 kilograms. At the speeds they traveled, they carried more destructive energy than a small nuclear bomb. And they were completely silent. No flash, no trail, just a target that suddenly stopped existing. All 6 are charged and ready, Suho said. Each one can fire 12 rounds before it needs to recharge. That gives us 72 shots. Make every one count, Taeho said. While Suho prepared the orbital defenses, Captain Jion was doing the same on the ground. Earth's fighter wings were hidden in underground hangars, spread across 6 continents. Each hangar held between 50 and 200 fighters, depending on the region. The fighters were fast, heavily armed, and built specifically for space combat. They could launch from the surface, break through the atmosphere in under 3 minutes, and engage targets in low orbit. Ji-Yoon had trained her pilots for exactly this kind of fight. They had run thousands of simulations over the years, practicing against fictional alien fleets with different tactics and ship configurations. Now it was real, and Ji-yoon could see the tension in her pilots' faces during briefings. She handled it the way she always did. She was honest. "I am not going to lie to you," she said, standing in front of 200 pilots in a briefing room carved out of solid rock beneath the mountains of central Korea. "We are facing an enemy we have never seen before. They have technology we do not fully understand, and there are a lot of them." She paused and looked across the room. Every eye was on her. "But we have something they do not. We have been getting ready for this for 40 years. Every weapon, every tactic, every training exercise, it was all for this moment. They think we are easy. They think this planet is undefended. They are wrong, and we are going to prove it." The room was silent for a moment. Then someone in the back started clapping. It spread quickly. Ji-yoon did not smile. She simply nodded and said, "Get to your ships." Meanwhile, on the far side of the moon, Admiral Hana was waking up her fleet. The lunar fleet was Earth's deepest secret. 300 heavy destroyers, each one nearly half a kilometer long, armed with plasma batteries, missile arrays, and reinforced armor plating. They had been built in pieces on Earth over 20 years, launched quietly under the cover of routine space missions, and assembled in the vast underground caverns that had been carved into the moon's interior. No one outside the Global Defense Corp knew they existed. Not the public, not most governments, not even most of the military. Hana had commanded the fleet for 8 years, living on the moon for months at a time, running drills in the silence of space. Her crew was disciplined and ready. They had trained for years in zero gravity and in the harsh environment of the lunar base. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were volunteers who had agreed to live in secret, far from their families, knowing they might never be called to fight. Now the call had come, and not a single one of them hesitated. Hana stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the status reports come in. One by one, each destroyer powered up its engines, loaded its weapons, and reported ready. The process took 3 days. When it was done, 300 warships sat in the darkness behind the moon, invisible to anything approaching from deep space. Hana sent a short message to Taeho. "Lunar fleet is awake and standing by." Taeho read the message and allowed himself a small breath of relief. The pieces were in place. Now they had to wait. The waiting was the hardest part. Yuna tracked the Vishari fleet every hour from her station in Canada. The fleet had slowed slightly as it entered the outer solar system. It passed the orbit of Neptune without stopping. Then Uranus. Then Saturn. Each day it grew closer, and each day the energy readings grew stronger. She sent regular updates to Taeho. Her reports were always precise, always calm, but she felt the weight of what was coming. She looked at the numbers on her screen, 9,700 ships, and tried not to think about what would happen if the defenses failed. She pushed the thought away and focused on her work. There was nothing else she could do. On Earth, life went on as normal. People went to work, children went to school. The news talked about weather and politics and sports. Nobody looked up at the sky and felt afraid. Nobody knew there was anything to be afraid of. That was by design. Taeho had insisted on it. Panic would cause chaos. Chaos would slow down the defense. The best thing the people of Earth could do right now was live their lives. The Global Defense Corps would handle the rest. In the command bunker, Taeho stood in front of the main display. It showed the entire solar system. A massive red cluster of dots was moving slowly inward from beyond Saturn. A thin blue line of dots circled Earth, the Iron Veil. 6 green dots marked the railguns. Hundreds of small yellow dots sat on the surface of every continent, the fighter wings. And behind the moon, 300 white dots waited in silence. Taeho studied the display for a long time. "They are bringing everything they have," he said quietly. "Good. That means when we break them completely." He turned away from the screen and sat down at his desk. He opened a drawer and took out a photograph. It showed a woman and a young boy, smiling in front of a small house with a garden. His wife, his son. He had not seen them in 2 months. He might never see them again. He looked at the photograph for a moment, then put it back in the drawer and closed it. They sent 9,700 ships to assault Earth. Only 17 survived. Part 1. The Signal. The HFY Empire had ruled 11 star systems for over 3,000 years. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and eyes that glowed a dull orange. They believed they were the strongest species in the galaxy. No one had ever proven them wrong. Their fleets had crushed dozens of civilizations. Their armies had burned entire worlds to ash. They did not know fear. They did not know defeat. So when their long-range listening stations first picked up strange radio signals coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy, they were not worried. They were curious. Their scientists studied the signals for years. They decoded the languages. They watched the broadcasts. They saw humans fighting each other in wars. They saw poverty. They saw confusion. And they laughed. Fleet Commander Dolgan stood in the war chamber of the Vishari capital world and looked at the data on the enormous display screen. Earth, a single planet, no colonies, no interstellar travel, a species that had not even left its own solar system yet. "They are children," Dolgan said to his officers. His voice was deep and carried the weight of 100 victories. "They play with simple machines and kill each other over patches of dirt. This will not be a war. It will be a collection." The Vishari High Council approved the invasion without debate. They wanted Earth's water, its metals, and its location. It sat at the edge of a useful trade route. Taking it would be easy. Holding it would be even easier. Dolgan assembled the largest fleet the Vishari had sent anywhere in over 500 years. 9,700 warships, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, bombers, and troop transports. Each ship was armed with plasma cannons and energy shields that had never been broken by any known weapon. The fleet stretched across space like a dark river, blocking out the stars behind it. They entered faster than light travel and set course for Earth. The journey would take several months. Dolgan spent that time planning the ground invasion. He expected to lose no more than 50 ships. He told his officers to have the occupation government ready before they even arrived. He did not send scouts ahead. He did not scan for defenses. He saw no reason to. That was his first mistake. On Earth, deep beneath the frozen ground of northern Canada, a facility known only as Station 9 had been operating in secret for over 40 years. It was not on any map. It did not appear in any government budget. Only a handful of people on the entire planet knew it existed. Lieutenant Yuna was one of them. She was 29 years old, small in build, with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had been recruited out of the Korean Air Force 3 years ago for her skill in signal analysis. She had spent every day since then sitting in front of screens, watching the sky. Most days, there was nothing. Space was big and mostly empty. But not today. The Deep Space Sensor Array picked up a massive energy disturbance beyond the orbit of Pluto. It was not natural. The signature was structured, repeating, and moving. Yuna ran the data through every filter she had. Her stomach turned cold. She picked up the phone and called General Tejo. Tejo was 61 years old. He had served in the military for nearly 4 decades. He had fought in 2 wars and commanded forces on 3 continents. But for the last 15 years, his real job had been something else entirely. He was the commander of the Global Defense Corps, a secret military branch created by a quiet agreement between 12 nations. Its purpose was simple. If something ever came from the sky, Tejo would be the one to fight it. He had hoped that day would never come, but he had prepared for it every single day. When Yuna told him what the sensors had found, Taeho did not panic. He did not raise his voice. He sat in silence for 10 seconds, then spoke. How many? Thousands, sir. The array cannot give an exact count yet, but the energy signature is enormous. Nothing natural moves like that. Time to arrival? At their current speed, approximately 4 months. Taeho closed his eyes. 4 months. It was not a lot of time, but it was enough. He activated Protocol Horizon. Within 1 hour, secure messages were sent to military commanders in 12 countries. Within 6 hours, underground facilities on every continent began powering up systems that had been sleeping for years. Within 24 hours, the most powerful weapons ever built by human hands were online and waiting. The world did not know. There were no news reports, no emergency broadcasts, no panic in the streets. The leaders who knew kept it quiet. Panic would help no one. Preparation would help everyone. Taeho flew to the Central Command bunker buried deep under the Pacific Ocean, near the Mariana Trench. It was the heart of Earth's secret defense network. The walls were lined with screens showing every orbital satellite, every weapons platform, every hidden fleet. He gathered his war council. Captain Ji-yoon arrived first. She was 34, a fighter pilot with more flight hours than anyone in the Corps. She was calm under pressure and aggressive in combat. She would lead Earth's air and space fighter wings. He was 45, thin, quiet, and brilliant. He had spent 20 years designing weapons that most people would not believe were real. Orbital railguns, directed energy satellites, kinetic bombardment platforms. He had built them all, tested them all, and hidden them all in plain sight among the thousands of satellites orbiting Earth. Admiral Hana arrived last. She was 52, tall, and carried herself like someone who had already won the battle she was walking into. She commanded Earth's greatest secret, a fleet of 300 heavy destroyers hidden inside hollowed-out craters on the far side of the moon. No telescope on Earth could see them. No satellite from any other world had ever detected them. Taeho looked at each of them. "They are coming," he said. "We do not know exactly what they are. We do not know exactly how many. But we know they are not friendly, and we know they think we are weak." He paused and let that settle. "We are going to show them how wrong they are." No one in the room smiled. No one cheered. They simply nodded and got to work. There was no time for speeches. There was only time for action. Above them, the sky was calm and full of stars. Somewhere out in the black, 9,700 ships were heading straight for Earth. They carried enough firepower to burn the planet 10 times over. They had no idea what was waiting for them.